Rain slammed against the emergency room windows hard enough to make the glass tremble. Leah pushed a stretcher through the hallway while one of the wheels squeaked every few seconds. The fluorescent lights overhead painted everything in washed-out white. A little boy cried somewhere near triage. Phones rang nonstop behind the reception desk. Someone had spilled coffee near the nurse's station, and the bitter smell mixed badly with antiseptic. Normal night. Too normal. She parked the empty stretcher against the wall and reached for the next patient chart just as the emergency doors burst open downstairs. Voices exploded through the corridor. "Move! Gunshot wound! Pressure's dropping." Leah barely looked up at first, until... Male, 33, names Daniel Reeves. The chart slipped from her fingers. Paper scattered across the floor. Nobody noticed except her. For one terrifying second, all the noise around her stretched strangely distant. The hallway blurred slightly at the edges. Her throat tightened around air that suddenly felt too cold. Daniel Reeves. No. Not here. Not after 5 years. A doctor rushed past her. Leah, trauma room 3. Now. Her body moved before her thoughts did. She bent quickly, gathered the fallen papers with stiff fingers, then walked toward trauma without letting herself think too hard. Because if she thought too hard, she would turn around and leave. The trauma room doors swung open. Bright lights, metal instruments, blood. Daniel lay unconscious on the bed while paramedics cut through his black shirt. Blood-soaked thick gauze wrapped around his shoulder and ribs. Rainwater clung to his dark hair. A bruise spread along his jawline. Older, thinner, but still him. Still the man who vanished 3 months before their wedding without explanation. Leah snapped on gloves immediately. Professional, steady. Her eyes stayed fixed on the heart monitor. Not his face. Never his face. Need another IV line. She stepped forward automatically. Alcohol swab, needle, tape. Her hands almost shook when his skin touched her fingers. Almost. Then his head moved slightly against the pillow. His voice came out rough beneath the oxygen mask. "Leah?" Her stomach twisted violently. No, he didn't get to say her name like that. Not anymore. She kept her gaze locked on the IV tubing. "Stay with us, sir," another nurse said quickly. "Sir. Good. Let him stay, sir. Not Daniel. Not the man who used to kiss flour off her cheek while she cooked at midnight. Just another patient. That was safer. Much safer. Welcome back. Tonight's story is one of those quiet, emotional train wrecks that starts with silence instead of screaming. And honestly, those are usually the worst kind. Anyway, let's get into it. The surgery doors closed behind Daniel less than 20 minutes later. Leah stood near the sink in the empty hallway, scrubbing already clean hands under burning hot water. Again and again and again. The skin around her knuckles turned pink. She didn't stop until another nurse touched her arm lightly. "You okay?" Leah shut off the faucet immediately. "Fine." "You look pale." "Long shift." The nurse nodded and walked away. Leah leaned both palms against the sink afterward and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Tired eyes, hair escaping her bun, blue scrubs wrinkled from 12 hours on her feet. She barely recognized herself anymore. Good. The old version of her had waited 6 months for a man who never came home. The old version checked her phone every night, hoping for one message. One explanation, one mercy. That woman was gone, or at least she tried to believe she was. 2 hours later, the surgeon finally stepped into the waiting corridor, pulling off bloody gloves. "He made it." Leah crossed her arms tightly. "Condition?" "Stable for now," he sighed tiredly. bullet missed his lung by inches. She nodded once. No reaction, no expression. The surgeon studied her face carefully. You know him? Too long of a pause. Used to. He seemed about to ask more. Didn't. Good. Leah wasn't sure her voice would survive another sentence. Later that night, she entered Daniel's recovery room carrying medication. The room sat mostly dark except for green monitor lights blinking softly near the bed. Rain tapped gently against the windows now instead of raging. Daniel slept on his side beneath thin hospital blankets, a bandage wrapped around his ribs beneath the open gown. Leah moved quietly, checked the IV, adjusted the monitor, recorded vitals, every movement careful, controlled. Her eyes never lifted above his shoulder. You still avoid eye contact when you're angry. Her hand froze instantly. The voice sounded rougher than she remembered. Slower, worn down, but unmistakably his. Leah continued writing on the chart. You're confusing me with somebody else. A weak smile pulled slightly at his mouth. No chance. Silence settled heavily between them. The heart monitor beeped steadily. Daniel opened his eyes fully. She looked immediately at the medication tray instead. Anywhere except him. You became a nurse. You got shot. That almost made him laugh. Pain stopped it halfway. His face tightened sharply. Without thinking, Leah checked the monitor. Don't move too much. You still do that. Do what? Pretend you don't care. Her expression hardened immediately. I'm doing my job. Daniel watched her carefully for a second. You cut your hair. You disappeared. The room went still. No machines, no rain, nothing. Just that sentence hanging between them like broken glass. Daniel looked away first. Good. She wanted him uncomfortable. Wanted him carrying at least one fraction of what he left behind. Leah adjusted his blanket mechanically. You need rest. Leah! Don't. His jaw tightened slightly. Please. The word came out quieter than expected. That almost made things worse. She turned toward the door. I called you for months. Her hand stopped on the handle. Slowly. What? Daniel swallowed carefully. After I left? Leah frowned slightly. No, that wasn't true. I changed numbers because you vanished. I know. You sent one voicemail. I sent hundreds. Her grip tightened around the door handle. What? Daniel looked genuinely confused now. Your brother answered once. Her chest tightened painfully. He told me never to contact you again. The hallway outside suddenly sounded too loud. Her older brother had blocked Daniel everywhere after the breakup. At the time, she'd been too shattered to argue. But letters? Calls? Her stomach twisted slowly. Leah forced herself out of the room before her face betrayed anything. The hallway felt colder afterward. The next morning smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Leah stood near the nurse's station, pretending to organize patient files while trying very hard not to look toward room 214. Maya leaned against the counter beside her. So, she said carefully, what's the deal with gunshot guy? No deal. He keeps asking if you're on shift. Leah continued sorting papers. He's not my patient. Maya raised an eyebrow. That sounded personal. Leah sighed quietly. He used to be my fiancé. Maya blinked twice. Oh. Yeah. What happened? The question sat heavily in the air. Leah stared down at the files in her hands. He disappeared. That's it? One voicemail. Her throat tightened slightly. No explanation. Maya winced softly. Damn. Leah nodded once. Then, he looked terrified when security came earlier. Leah frowned slightly. Why security? You didn't hear? Maya lowered her voice. Police came looking for him around 4 this morning. Something cold slid down Leah's spine immediately. Police? Why? Before she could ask another question, an alarm beeped from down the hall. Room 214. Daniel. Her feet moved before she thought about it. She pushed open the door quickly. Daniel sat halfway upright, wincing while trying to pull his IV line loose. What are you doing? He looked up immediately, and for one terrible second, their eyes met fully. 5 years collapsed instantly. Leah looked away first. Daniel's breathing slowed slightly, like even that tiny moment affected him physically. I need to leave. You can barely stand. They found me. Who? Daniel rubbed a hand over his face tiredly. Leah. No, you don't get to say my name like we're halfway through a normal conversation. His jaw tightened. You should stay away from me. A bitter laugh escaped her immediately. Wow, familiar line. Pain flickered briefly across his expression. Real pain, not physical. Good. Maybe. She wasn't sure anymore. Daniel looked toward the hallway before lowering his voice. I testified against someone. Leah stared at him. What? After I left. Her pulse started climbing immediately. Testified against who? He hesitated too long. That told her enough. Dangerous people. The realization settled coldly in her stomach. You got shot because of this? Daniel didn't answer, which answered everything. Leah folded her arms tightly. So, your solution was disappearing before our wedding? I thought they'd use you against me. You should have trusted me. I was trying to keep you alive. You were trying to make decisions for me. Silence, sharp, heavy. Daniel looked exhausted suddenly, like he'd been carrying the same conversation inside his head for years. You think leaving didn't destroy me too? Leah looked away immediately. Because the worst part? He sounded honest. Later that evening, rain returned harder than before. Leah sat alone in the cafeteria, stirring cold soup she wasn't eating. The hospital television played muted news nobody watched. Her phone buzzed beside the tray. Mom. Leah stared at the screen, declined the call. Not tonight. A chair scraped softly across from her. Maya sat down carefully, holding vending machine chips. You okay? No. That honest, huh? Leah almost laughed. Almost. She stared at the rain sliding down cafeteria windows. I spent years convincing myself he cheated. Maya stayed quiet. He left 3 months before our wedding. Leah swallowed hard. That's usually not what innocent people do. But now? Leah rubbed tired fingers against her forehead. I don't know what now is. Silence settled briefly. Then Maya spoke carefully. You know what's weird? Leah glanced up. He looks at you like someone drowning. That irritated her instantly. He's manipulative. Maybe. Maya opened the chip bag slowly. But manipulative people usually look smoother than that. Leah looked back toward the rain, and hated that part of her agreed. That night, she found Daniel awake again. Moonlight filtered through the blinds in pale silver lines. The room smelled faintly like antiseptic and rain. Leah checked his IV quietly. You still drink coffee too late. She froze briefly. How would you know? You used to microwave the same cup 3 times. Damn him. Tiny memories shouldn't survive this long. She adjusted the monitor instead of responding. Daniel watched her carefully. You never got the letters? Leah shook her head once. How many? 31. Her chest tightened painfully. 31. I wrote every night for a month after I left. Leah stared at the floor tiles. Her older brother hated Daniel after the breakup. Her mother, too. Had they really hidden everything? Daniel swallowed carefully. I came back once. Her eyes lifted slightly before she stopped herself. What? You were asleep on the couch. His voice lowered. TV was still on. Leah's heartbeat stumbled. You came to my apartment? Just outside. Why didn't you knock? A sad smile touched his face briefly. Because you looked peaceful for the first time in months. She had cried herself to sleep that night. He mistook exhaustion for peace. The realization hurt unexpectedly deep. Before she could answer, voices rose loudly in the hallway. Both looked toward the door instinctively. 2 police officers stepped into the room moments later. Daniel's expression changed immediately, alert, guarded. We need another statement, one officer said. Daniel leaned back slowly against the pillow. Already gave one. We have reason to believe someone tracked you here. Leah's stomach dropped instantly. The officer continued. We're placing security on this floor tonight. Daniel glanced briefly toward Leah. Fear crossed his face for half a second. Not for himself, for her. That unsettled her more than anything else. After the officers left, silence filled the room heavily. Leah crossed her arms. You should have told me immediately. I was trying not to drag you into this. You already did. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Yeah. The honesty of that landed harder than excuses would have. Leah moved toward the door, then stopped, without turning back. Did you love her? Daniel frowned slightly. Who? The woman you left me for. The silence afterward stretched painfully long. Then, there wasn't another woman. Leah slowly faced him halfway. For the first time since he arrived, she looked directly at his face, fully. Daniel held her gaze carefully. Like even eye contact felt fragile now. You really believed that? You vanished. I was terrified. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Leah looked away first, because suddenly the room felt too small to breathe inside. The next morning, the hospital buzzed with nervous energy. Extra security stood near elevators. Police officers moved through corridors quietly. Leah tried focusing on work, failed repeatedly. Every few minutes, she caught herself thinking about letters she never saw, calls she never heard, apologies buried before reaching her. By noon, exhaustion settled heavily behind her eyes. She entered Daniel's room, carrying fresh bandages. He looked pale beneath the fluorescent light. The bruising near his jaw had darkened overnight. Leah changed the dressing carefully. Her fingers brushed warm skin near the stitches. Daniel inhaled sharply. Sorry. You still apologize when you're concentrating. She ignored that, but her movements softened slightly anyway. You should hate me, he murmured after a while. I tried. That almost broke him. She saw it happen immediately. His eyes lowered, jaw tightening once, like he physically swallowed pain. You moved on? He asked quietly. Leah taped fresh gauze carefully into place. There was someone. Daniel nodded slowly. But every time he didn't answer his phone, Her voice thinned slightly. I assumed he was leaving too. Silence swallowed the room. Good. Let him hear it. Let him understand what abandonment sounds like years later. A loud crash suddenly echoed from somewhere downstairs. Both looked toward the door. Then, another sound, like shouting. Daniel's face changed instantly. Lock the door. Leah frowned. What? Please. Something sharp in his tone made her move automatically. She locked it, turned back slowly. Daniel pushed himself upright despite obvious pain. That wasn't random. Before Leah could respond, a scream echoed faintly through the hallway. Then running footsteps. Hospital alarms exploded seconds later. Daniel stood immediately. What are you doing? We need to move. You've been shot. And somebody just entered this hospital looking for me. Fear slammed into Leah's chest hard enough to hurt. Another scream echoed closer now. Daniel grabbed her wrist. Warm fingers. Familiar. Leah. She looked up at him fully and saw it. Not panic, not confusion. Fear. Real fear. For her. A gunshot exploded somewhere nearby. Leah flinched violently. The sound ripped through the hallway, followed by screaming. Daniel pulled her toward the back exit immediately. Pain tightened across his face with every step. They moved into the corridor just as nurses ran past in chaos. Red emergency lights flashed suddenly overhead. The power cut halfway. Everything turned violent and strange. Another gunshot, closer, too close. Daniel shoved Leah behind him instantly. A man appeared at the far end of the hallway holding a gun. Everything happened too fast afterward. Security officers shouted. People dropped to the floor screaming. The armed man lifted the weapon. Daniel grabbed a metal supply cart and shoved it sideways hard enough to crash across the hallway. The gunshot exploded into the ceiling instead. Leah's ears rang violently. Daniel pulled her toward the stairwell immediately. They stumbled inside just as more security rushed down the corridor behind them. The heavy stairwell door slammed shut. Silence. Only distant alarms echoed through concrete walls. Leah leaned against the railing, trying to steady her breathing. Daniel sat heavily on the stairs, clutching his side. Blood spotted through fresh bandages. You're bleeding. I'm okay. You're not okay. She knelt immediately beside him. Her hands pressed gently against the wound while trying to stop the bleeding. Daniel watched her quietly. You're looking at me now. The words landed softly between them. Leah froze slightly. Because he was right. She was, not at charts, not at monitors, at him, fully. And suddenly she saw every exhausted year written across his face. The guilt, the sleeplessness, the loneliness, the same things she carried too. Her hands slowed against the bandage. Why didn't you come back after it was over? She whispered. Daniel stared down at the concrete floor. Because it wasn't over. And now? A long silence. Then, I don't know. The honesty hurt worse than lies, but somehow felt safer too. Sirens echoed faintly outside now. The hospital chaos downstairs slowly quieted. Neither moved. The stairwell felt suspended outside time somehow. Daniel leaned his head back against the wall carefully. I used to drive past your apartment. Leah's breath caught slightly. What? Sometimes after work. She stared at him quietly. I'd see your kitchen light on and... He swallowed hard. Sit there like an idiot for 20 minutes. Leah looked away immediately, because tears burned suddenly behind her eyes. I thought you stopped loving me. Daniel turned toward her instantly. Pain crossed his face so fast it looked physical. Never. No hesitation. No pause. Just truth. And somehow that made everything worse, or better. She honestly couldn't tell anymore. Daniel studied her quietly. You don't have to forgive me. Leah laughed shakily once. That's the problem. What is? She looked at him fully again. I think part of me already did. Silence wrapped around them softly after that. Not hostile anymore, just tired. Hours later, dawn slowly broke across the hospital parking lot. Rain had finally stopped. Police escorted Daniel toward a black SUV waiting near the emergency entrance. Leah stood beneath the awning, holding discharge paperwork she barely remembered signing. Cold morning wind moved through the parking lot. Daniel paused beside the SUV door. Neither spoke immediately. Too much sat between them now. Finally, you still hate hospitals? He asked quietly. A tiny laugh escaped her before she could stop it. There he is. His smile appeared slowly, real this time. The first real smile she'd seen from him in years. An officer opened the SUV door behind him, time moving again. Daniel reached into his jacket carefully, pulled out something small, a ring, her engagement ring. Leah stared at it without breathing. I couldn't throw it away, he said softly. Morning sunlight broke through clouds suddenly, spilling gold across the wet pavement between them. The metal gleamed quietly in his hand. 5 years collapsed inward all at once. Wedding invitations, dance lessons before the ceremony, choosing apartment paint colors, the future that disappeared overnight. Leah looked from the ring to his face, and this time, she didn't look away. Daniel stepped closer carefully, close enough for her to notice the exhaustion beneath his eyes, close enough to remember every version of him at once. I don't expect anything, he murmured. I just thought maybe it belongs with you. He placed the ring gently into her palm. Their fingers brushed. Neither moved immediately. Traffic hissed softly across wet streets nearby. Hospital doors slid open and shut behind her. Life continuing, always continuing. Daniel stepped backward, slowly toward the SUV. Leah watched him reach the open door, watched him pause before climbing inside. Then, before she could overthink it, she spoke. Daniel. He turned immediately. Leah's fingers closed slowly around the ring. The wind moved gently through loose strands of her hair, and for the first time in 5 years, she held his gaze without flinching. No anger, no walls, just 2 exhausted people standing in morning light beside a hospital that changed everything. Daniel looked at her quietly, waiting. Leah swallowed once, then slipped the ring carefully into her pocket. Not onto her finger, not yet, but not away either. And something in Daniel's expression softened so deeply it almost hurt to watch. The SUV door closed moments later. Leah stood beneath the hospital awning while the vehicle disappeared slowly into waking city traffic. Rainwater dripped from the roof beside her in soft, steady taps. Inside her pocket, the ring felt warm against her palm, and for the first time in years, when she thought about Daniel Reeves, she didn't picture the man who left. She pictured the man who came back bleeding. Some stories don't heal cleanly. Sometimes they leave scars that ache every time it rains. But every now and then, somebody returns carrying the truth too late, and somehow your heart still opens the door a little. Anyway, if this one stayed with you after it ended, you probably understand why.